Was it a program-changing victory? Well, only time will tell, but it certainly felt like one, and it looked like one in the second half for Tennessee against Florida. SEC Breakdown reviewing the Vols win over the Gators 38-28 with 35 consecutive points in the second half. Mike Loveall and Mark Rogers here. Mike, you just released your game grades for the Tennessee Vols on Twitter. Also check it out on Last Word on Sports. And wow, remarkable turnaround from so many different aspects. I want you to start with the most glaring difference for you in regards to the first half play of the Vols versus the second half.
Well, I think the most glaring difference for me, Mark, was the line of scrimmage in the first half. The Florida offensive line and the Florida defensive line owned the line of scrimmage. They were routinely getting 4 yards, 5 yards per rush for a Florida rushing attack that was not very promoted coming into this game. The defensive line for Florida was able to push around Tennessee's offensive line. A lot of pressure on Joshua Dobbs, and the Tennessee running game really didn't do that much. Coming out in the second half, both the defensive line, they were able to get a lot of pressure on Austin Appleby and make a lot of good plays there against the Florida run defense. Florida couldn't really run at all in the second half. And then the Tennessee offensive line looked like a different unit in the second half than they looked like in the first half. Now, a little bit of that is the benefit of having Joshua Dobbs as your quarterback, a mobile quarterback, strong quarterback. A little bit of it was having a tough rushing game with Jalen Hurd and Alvin Kamara, who just wore down the Florida defense. And a part of that was a little bit of scheme from Coach DeBoer. But the offensive line come out in the second half of this game and look like a completely different unit. It was by far the best half of football that the Tennessee offensive line has played yet this season.
Mike, we'll hit the overriding storylines in just a second and what this could mean for the Tennessee season and for the program in general. And Butch Jones, the two guys that, as we stick to the nuts and bolts and the personnel, the two guys that jumped off the screen to me in the second half were Todd Kelly Jr. and Derek Barnett on defense. Those were the two guys that I felt made a huge difference in this game.
Yeah, Derek Barnett had one tackle for loss and one sack, but more importantly, he was able to take up at least two Florida defenders on every play. He was constantly in the backfield, which is what Tennessee needed to kind of disrupt that. And when you have a backup quarterback making his first start in the SEC on the road in a hostile environment like that, where there was a lot of pressure to continue the streak, having Barnett in the backfield and disrupting that play was huge. Todd Kelly Jr., excellent play, had the interception there on Appleby. Controlling that secondary a little bit. The secondary kind of had some problems in the first half. Todd Kelly's back there roaming the middle of the field. His run support defense is probably going to be overlooked, but had tremendous support on those short passes that Florida was throwing with success early on, and then coming up and filling some holes to ensure there were no big plays. That's really what Todd Kelly Jr. brought to this game. A phenomenal play by both players.
Okay, Mike, another huge game changer for me. You already alluded to it. If there was one unit difference in this game that really favored the Gators for me in a game that if you really totaled the personnel and the units, it seemed like a dead even game to me, was that Florida has a tremendous front seven. Specifically, the defensive front has been amazing in recent years. And through the first three games against inferior foes versus a Tennessee offensive line that I believe started 4 different starting lineups in the first 4 games. And the way things played out in the first half, I was not surprised. I thought, okay, this is where Florida has the huge advantage, and it's paying off. And the other would be the Florida secondary, one of the best in the country, and Tennessee having a tremendous talent at the wide receiver position, but just dropping footballs. Ethan Wolf having a rough first half. The wide receivers just not helping out Josh Dobbs against an elite secondary.
Yeah, Mark, if you look at Josh Dobbs finished 16 for 32, if you add in those 5 drop passes, and really you alluded to it, Ethan Wolf had 2 drop passes in the first half. Jason Kroom dropped a touchdown, and then Alvin Kamara dropped one that was probably going to be a touchdown, would have at least been a first down inside the red zone. So if you add in those 5 drop passes, and they were pretty much all 5 egregious drop passes, Dobbs finishes 21 for 32, which is around 65%. He had 319 yards with 4 passing touchdowns. You add in some of those, he gets to about 350 yards with 5, maybe even 6 passing touchdowns. So the passing game was clicking for Joshua Dobbs. Ethan Wolf, you talked about the secondary and the defensive line. I think the Florida defensive line was just worn down. I think Tennessee ran. I think they had I have it right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 16 drives. So you're looking at probably 80, maybe even 90 plays in this game for the Tennessee offense. So I think Tennessee's wide receivers were able to deliver today. Obviously, they were able to deliver, but a lot of that has to do with Joshua Dobbs. And then I think Florida's defensive line was just worn down at the end. While you're not going to see a lot of big numbers from Jalen Hurd or Joshua Dobbs on the ground, Hurd had 95 yards, Dobbs had 80. A lot of that was maintaining balance for the offense, and a lot of it was grinding, wearing it out yardage that just told on Florida. One of the things they're talking about in Knoxville is the reason why this is a very big win for Butch Jones is this kind of shows the depth that Tennessee has. If you look at the Florida defense, while they have a top-tier national defense across the board, they had a couple of guys get hurt, and they have to play probably, if I had to guess off the top of my head, probably 50 plays in the second half. They don't have that ability like Alabama or Tennessee to bring in 4 defensive linemen for these 3 or 4 plays and then 4 more defensive linemen for the next 4 or 5 plays. Florida pretty much has a top-level national defense on the first team, but the disparity between the first team and the second team is pretty significant. I think that was the key for Tennessee. I think that's why you saw a drop-off from the first half to the second half in those 2 really good units for Florida, the secondary and the defensive line. They were just on the field far too much.
Michael Loveall and Mark Rogers checking out Tennessee's win over Florida. For SEC Breakdown, you can check out Mike's game grades at Last Word on Sports. So, Mike, as just observers of football, watching the game, analyzing, reviewing a game, a 21-point comeback to score 35 against a quality opponent, that's impressive unto itself. Now let's get to the point that makes this an even more impressive and significant win for this program in this situation against this opponent. You talked about it a number of different ways from different perspectives and angles throughout the offseason and leading up to this game. Talk about what this could mean for Butch Jones in Tennessee.
Huge game for Tennessee. Obviously, the easy story to start with is the 11-game losing streak to Florida. They get that monkey off their back. But more importantly, I think the real story out of this game is the resiliency. This team is a very resilient team. They come out, they played without 3 of their 4 best players on defense. Cam Sutton was out for the game. Darren Kirkland Jr. was out for the game. And Jalen Reeves-Maben only played a handful of plays before he had to go out for the game. So you had an entire second-team linebacking core who had not performed well previously. They really stepped up, played an A game, and really shut down the Florida offense second half. Florida got that late touchdown in the fourth quarter, but it took Florida had no first downs in the entire third quarter, and it took them about 5 minutes into the fourth quarter before they were even able to get a first down. So the resiliency of this game, getting down 21-3 at halftime, then coming out in the second half and just being methodical and grinding out the win. The resiliency of this team. It's Butch Jones's first signature win. He had a couple good wins against South Carolina, a big win against Georgia last year. But at Tennessee, your signature wins are against Florida and Alabama, and that's it. If you can't beat one of those 2 teams, they're not really signature wins. Tennessee had a record number of official visit recruits in Neyland Stadium today, including ESPN's #1 recruit for the next class, Trey Smith, offensive tackle out of Jackson, Tennessee. So those recruits saw an electric atmosphere. They saw the alternate jerseys. They saw the fan base checkerboard the stadium, and they saw Tennessee come out in the second half and absolutely dominate this game. So if you're a recruit and you're thinking about where am I going to go to compete for Eastern Division championships and SEC championships, first and foremost, if you're on that field today, first and foremost in your mind is going to be Tennessee as far as Eastern teams. Obviously, if you go to Alabama, you're going to have a chance to compete for championships there.
Mike, so this game, go right ahead. Keep going.
No, I was just saying this game is critical to the program. We knew it coming in, and now with the win, Tennessee can use this as a springboard, a first step. But they have to capitalize on that big game next week against Georgia, obviously. But this was a huge win for Tennessee. Now they just have to capitalize on it and move forward. They have the inside track for the East Championship in Atlanta. They just have to go out and finish what they've started now.
Mike, I've got to say that I thought of you dozens of times throughout the game, but specifically when I saw Butch Jones doing the CBS interview prior to kickoff, because of everything you've preached to us here on SEC Breakdown about the significance of this particular game. And then again, I kind of reset it at halftime, coming out with that 21-3 deficit and thinking, I'm not putting that last nail in the coffin, because I just have a feeling that this is still a game. These are two very evenly matched football teams. And even though everything's gone against Tennessee in recent years, they have yet to show, this particular group, this particular Tennessee unit has yet to show in this type of stage that it can come back or pull out a game of this magnitude. There's always got to be a first. And just kind of watching Butch, thinking, based on Mike's perspective here, this could be make or break in terms of a career changing situation for him in Knoxville.
Yeah, absolutely. As much success as Butch Jones has had in Knoxville, there's still a lot of naysayers, and it's because we have not, or it's because Tennessee has not beat Florida or Alabama since Butch Jones has been there. Huge win. If you look at the resiliency aspect of this team, I would tell you that I'm the guy that when I look at coaches, I don't evaluate head coaches on play calling. I think that's coordinators. I'm also the guy that doesn't necessarily think you have to have a coordinator to become a head coach, because I think a head coach is responsible for the health of the program, the overall health of the overall program, not just offense or defense. If you look at the resiliency of this team, the way they've come out, battled through some slow starts early in the season, and then come out and played a fantastic second half today after being down 21-3 against a very good team and a team that has beat you 11 years in a row. This team is clearly mentally and emotionally prepared to take the next step. Now, I'm not going to say they're going to go win a national championship. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is today is evidence of what Butch Jones has been able to do with the Tennessee program. He has this team mentally and emotionally prepared to take the next step. Now, they'll have to perform on the field to get there, but he's done a remarkable job getting this program mentally and emotionally ready to take that next step.
Tennessee comes back from 21 down to defeat Florida at home, 38-28, break the 11-game losing streak and win its most significant game on the schedule in regards to winning an SEC Eastern Division championship. For Mike Loveall, I'm Mark Rogers. Thanks for joining us here on SEC Breakdown.